And to the chair, it is now 11:07. And if you'd like, I would take roll.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Hillsborough,
Present.
Daly City,
Present.
San Bruno,
Present.
and the county of San Mateo.
Present.
Open it up for public comment as reserved for persons wishing to address the finance committee on any emergency service council related matter that is not otherwise on this meeting agenda. I see none online or in the room, so I'll turn it over to you for.
That's pretty easy.
Rose told me it was difficult, so I had to study.
Yeah, there you go. So we move to action to set the agenda and to approve the consent agenda items. Number one is approval of the March 21st, 2024 meeting minutes. Is there a motion? So move. Second. Roll call. Do we need to do roll call? Can we just?
It was motion by San Bruno, second by Daly City.
Correct.
I think I can just do all in favor.
Aye. Yep.
Unanimous.
Good. Approval to set the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Thank you.
Okay. And
Without objection.
without objection.
Very good.
All right.
Move to regular agenda item number 3, which is the main focus of the meeting, of course, which is to review and discuss the recommended 24-25 budget. Madam Director.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the council. I really took your advice and counsel from the last meeting, and the fiscal team and I worked very closely and basically detangled some of the legacy things that were still in the sheriff's office. They were in different buckets that live within DEM. The discussions that you all had about, you know, the space, the warehouse, and why certain contracts are in certain areas. And we basically redid the entire budget. So the right things are in the right budget categories. And the other parts of this is, as you all wish, I want to give you an overall of what is DEM's next year's budget proposed approximately, and then how the JPA fits into it, and what are some things that are very specific that you're going to see coming up. So I really appreciate all of your advice and suggestions and recommendations, and I and Michael took it to heart. So thank you for that. Next slide. So DEM has a budget of about $7 million, and the incoming revenues are cities. It's approximately 18%. The county portion of the ESC is about 17.4%. Grants that are coming in, both on the ESC side and on the JPA side, are about 8.7%. I have listed the trust in here, 7.7%. Generally, a trust is not listed as a revenue source. A reserve is what is listed in the revenue source. The trust gets brought in because of pre-approved expenses that this council had approved last year. And then the about 5.5% is coming from SFO. So that is the overall DEM budget, and the overall expenses. Next page, next slide. Salaries and benefits take quite a significant portion of it, by 44%. Programs and contracts, so that's contracts like we talked about for vegetation management, which are, you know, almost $800,000. Other smaller contracts for disaster preparedness day training, or which are like smaller contracts like 28K. So that is what lives in programs and contracts, and the service charges are facility charges, ISD charges, radio charges. So this is the overall for DEM.
Sure.
Yes.
Can I just ask for a clarification?
Yeah.
On the previous slide, you mentioned the reasoning of bringing trust into the graph.
Yeah.
Is the 7.7% reflecting the entire reserve, or are you talking about specifically the project that has been approved by the board on the
This-
previous budget year?
The 7.7 is the approved projects, yeah. Next slide. So the ESC JPA budget is 3.8 million, of which the cities are gonna be bringing in 1.3 million. The county is a little bit less than 1.3, it's 1.28 something. SFO is about 0.4 million, grants are about 0.3 million, and the trust fund is about 0.6 million. Next slide. So I want to give you a status, a health check on the trust fund. So the current value of the trust fund is 1.3 million approximately. Approved deductions for the vehicles, that's going to be about 200K. We're probably going to come a little less than that. But for now, we're going to keep 200K depending on what the pricing looks like. And the beginning value for 24-25 will be 1.14 million in the trust fund. The approved deductions that were approved by the council last year were the all hazard evacuation planning and the CRISP. So CRISP was 198 and all hazard evacuation planning was 375K. Estimated balance of the trust after those deductions are going to be 570K. The minimum cap on the trust is 500K. Next slide. So we're looking at the JPA expenses. About 1 million of the charges go to hazmat and environmental health services. Those two roll together during a hazmat incident. About 1 million of that is DEM personnel and ESC programs. This is specific to contracts or services that the programs are going to provide. And I'm going to go into the minutia and details of these. Facilities is about 0.5 million. And I want to take a moment, Michael, DPW, we actually sat down and looked at all of the squarage of this building and and looked at every department that was paying in. So we as DEM actually pay for our offices, this room, there's another room, breakout room, and then the hot EOC, which is a very small portion. ISD pays for server rooms that are here. And then the big room that you see, HR actually pays for, where we saw where they're doing a class today. So these are the charges that need to basically keep the facility costs up, the ongoing facilities. Fire liaison contract, that's about 0.2 million. And then the other services that is purple, that's not showing up on that slide, is actually your other charges such as radio or ISD charges. Next slide. So I'd like to take a moment and compare the budgets over the last few years. And as you can see, last year was an anomaly. And Michael and I did a lot of looking at the budgets and how things were budgeted. For example, there was an admin assistant that was in the paperwork, but was not budgeted. And then significant portions of the monies was not really put in because some of these programs that we were going to do did not really hit our books until this year. So on average, it's 3.1 million. And so the question you all must be having, as I had, is why is it 3.8 million, Shruti? And I have an answer for that. Next slide. So if you look at the average being 3.1 million, the trust fund and the grants. So the amount of money we're taking out of the trust fund is 575K. The rest are being covered by grants. The city's portion of this 880K, all of the city's portion is actually only 94K. Next slide. So of that 880K, all hazard evacuation planning is actually, coming out to be 492, with 375 coming out of the trust fund, and then others coming out of the grant. The county cities paying a tiny portion of 29K. Annual disaster preparedness day, 7K. 7K for the cities and counties, and the 14K coming out of the grants. Training for EOC, for your, city emergency managers, the tsunami sirens, small portion, virtual EOC software, which is about 54K, and CRISP, which is 198K. So here are the details of every single project or program that we're doing that accounts for that 880K. And if you add this up, the city's total is 93K. So sorry, could you go back? So one of the things that we are really focused on is the different EM preparedness, mitigation, recovery, response. So we've broken these up into the phases, and as I've shared with you all, every dollar that we spend on preparedness or mitigation, we get a minimum of $6 back in recovery costs, in other costs, and other benefits that we don't see, such as insurance companies coming back in 5 to 10 years. These are critical, and there is also some research that suggests that is only the quantifiable amounts of money. We can't quantify things like the security, the sense of security the community feels, or the stress of response to the communities, and things that actually are very untangible to quantify from a research and data perspective. Next slide.
So the total of the 24-25 fiscal year, other than the annual disaster preparedness day that is open to the public, all the others line items that in terms of the ESC programs are really for professional development, right? I mean, the training and professional development for the local agencies.
Correct.
Right, okay. So that's what the cities are paying to.
Correct.
I mean, paying to.
Correct. Thank you.
On this slide, could you quickly add up, maybe Mr. Leach can do this? Yes. Could you tell me the totals for preparedness, response, and mitigation broken out?
I'll take care of the mitigation.
I could have been.
If you give me just a minute.
We can go and look at that.
Next slide. So the JPA is an entity that supports every single city and the county's interest in disaster preparedness and recovery. And the four EM phases, emergency management phases, with the operational coordination are preparedness. So things that ESC gets from DEM is planning. You know, in this case, that is all hazard evacuation planning, but we're doing other planning as well, such as earthquake planning, or we're planning for heat emergencies right now. So trainings, our calendars are booked for all kinds of professional training. We had an active shooter training here just a couple of weeks ago where this room was filled with almost every city's police department, and we had a few fire departments in here and EMS exercises. This is the best way to actually learn, because during a disaster, what happens is we go back into our heuristics and our mental models. Instead of living an emergency, this is the best practice. So we do want our EM professionals to have the training and the exercising, the practice of emergency management, public outreach and education. In response, we have any response support. So whether that is, you know, many emergencies that we have that are actually big emergencies for cities, such as recently Foster City had a huge water line break, and, you know, their reserve water was running out. And, you know, we were thinking about, how do we get water? You know, what resources do they need? Thankfully, that emergency was averted, but these mini emergencies happen day to day that you all don't necessarily hear about on a regular basis. Alert and warning. So this is the umbrella of making sure folks have access to not just SMC alert, but we have alert and warning programs that span all types. You know, for example, we're actually working with all of your police departments to do high-low sirens, where Belmont is actually fully has that, and then now we're using that to do some exercising in parts of the coast and other areas, so we can actually build our planning as well. So these are separate buckets, but they're all interconnected in some way or the other.
So could I
Yeah.
interject? Are we talking about that DEM now is a key player in this whole connectivity side, shall we say? Because in the past, some of the programs that you're describing, there's public work, there's mutual aid, so to speak, across the board with the police, fire, or even the public work, but that matters. So you're saying that DEM now is in the position to be able to coordinate, so that in case that there are silos, that you will be able to connect, and then you'll be able to help them see that there are opportunities to sort of mitigate their disasters or whatever the problem areas are.
Absolutely. So that is the thing. We are the operational area coordination for emergency management. And mutual aid. So mitigation, that's anything from local hazard mitigation plan to fire mitigation to CRISP, and recovery support after a disaster. So these are the few things that we do on behalf of the ESC. I think Michael Leach has your answer, sir.
So preparedness makes up 70% for 614,000 and change. The response portion of that 880,000 is 8% at 68,000. And then the remainder, 198,000 is mitigation. That's 22%. Again, preparedness 70% at 614,000. Response at 8% or 68,000. Mitigation 198,000 at 22%.
Great, thank you.
Next slide. I'm happy to take any questions.
So why is it that you're not factoring in the recovery since the support and the liaison to the state, these are personnel? Isn't it the staff time? Or is
Yeah,
that considered
so-
under DEM and not?
Yeah, so right now it's under our DEM staff time, yeah, so, you know, from the way our staffing is right now, we have the coordinators that are on the ESC side of the house, and then we have coordinators on the team side.
On the disaster preparedness day. And it's 28,000. So. I see the split 50-50. Is that enough? I mean, I'm just trying to, I'm starting to look at all the personnel.
Yeah.
Maybe every agency, you know, if you go, you take care of it, but I mean,
This is,
do they charge us for utilizing their facilities?
yes, but they also give us some discounts, so this is, just the costs that are coming out of the ESC. In addition to this, the county is also paying another 6K, and then we have one person that's working solely on disaster preparedness day. It does lift, it's a pretty big lift, which is why Susie can talk a lot about this. So I think we want to see how this monies looks like and what the fit looks like this year, and then I want to be very conservative with how much money I spend.
That it?
That's it.
I have a question. On these breakdowns that Mr. Leach shared with us, 70%, 8%, 22% mitigation. If you looked at the best practices in the state of California, would the percents be about the same? In other words, do people spend more money, generally speaking, on preparedness and not so much on response?
I don't have the answer to that. I can look into that and get back.
Okay.
I don't know that people,
Well, let me ask you this. If you could get back to me, that would be good.
Yeah.
I'd be interested, but I'm curious about the philosophy or the underlying belief system that you had in getting to these numbers. What philosophy guided this preparation? Like, how did you decide what philosophy guided you and how much money to put into preparedness, for instance?
the philosophy that guided us was twofold. My own understanding of the emergency management space and the research suggesting, you know, every dollar you spend on mitigation or preparedness, you get minimum $6 back. Some say up to $22 back. So that should be where we should be spending our monies. The second part of this is these are pre-approved spendings. The majority of the portion of this is pre-approved spending in preparedness and mitigation that totals 575 approximately, 575K approximately. So it was approved by this council, and you know, I think the council had great foresight and instinct to actually know that this is work we need to be doing. So thank you for that.
I'm not sure I understood the answer, but the philosophy was, this is your best thought? Is that the idea of it?
There's research actually suggesting.
Research.
There's research, yeah, and we can get you all the.
Yeah, the way I interpret it is that, you know, the preparation, you do a lot of training and planning. that's going to help coordinate the efforts when it comes to disaster, and depends on where it hit and what kind of disasters. And then the training is going to benefit the cities because the staffs, whether it's police, fire, or, public work, they now have the understanding of what needs to be done. And so it's streamlined it in that way. So the cost is borne by these cities because of the staff. But the training category is being planned and executed by the DEM. And that helps, and that's why the cost sits on the preparation side heavily. I don't necessarily know the percentage of it, but that makes sense to me that your major funding will be focused on the preparation part. I would be interested in finding out, when you were saying for every dollar spent, $6 recoup. That is something that we've heard a lot in the disaster preparedness space. But, if you actually have studies to back it
We have
up,
studies,
that would be helpful.
Yeah, we have studies, those were prepared last ESC meeting, so we can send that to you.
On the CRISP, once that is completed, estimated next April, then that will,
That will be
Cool.
off of the.
okay.
There's no maintenance?
That plan has not been created yet.
So it will be reviewed as, not as a project, but as a maintenance.
So I think that is,
Somewhere.
that is a conversation that Supervisor Mueller and I will be having after we're finished with the majority of the data collection piece.
I didn't get the question, sorry.
I think, I don't think CRISP is gonna have ongoing costs that'll impact ESC.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I think this was a really good collaborative support, trying to identify infrastructure we might want to invest in. But those costs for the infrastructure are not going to be borne by the ESC, and the cost of maintenance of the
Right.
CRISP plan and further development is
Right.
not, we're not coming to the ESC.
Okay, yeah.
In fact, Supervisor Mueller is going to put some additional district discretionary funds towards CRISP.
How much
I don't know the answer to that quite yet.
can you find out?
Sure.
How do we, okay, I don't have any more questions.
And I would suspect, I'm sorry, but I would suspect that there are state or federal fundings that will continue to, factor in for the opportunity to apply, because if you have the infrastructures that you build, then you will be able to, and it's benefit regionally that there's opportunity for the grants availabilities.
We are, the CRISP project, it has highlighted how we can advocate and how we can layer funding sources. So ideally, eventually, what I would like to do is do something similar for the whole county. If there's interest.
Okay, we're not gonna vote on this, is that right?
No, but I will open it up for public comment, which I see none. And if you'd like, you can move on to the directors and members' reports.
Oh, I think,
No, Sylvester.
Start off, excuse me, I'll start off with the good parts and end off on the negatives. First of all, Doctor, I'd like to say, to this very day, with knowing what we know about you and what your previous profession was, I had some apprehensions in the sense of moving over to the DEM side and the experience, coming from a prior law enforcement perspective, what you have done, and of course with staff, because putting this together was no easy task, and I want to give you some points. I'm very impressed. When I look at slide number 3, and what grabbed me was the service charges, and I see that everyone is paying their fair share. Usually that gets overlooked. Slide number 6. Oh, that was slide number 6, facilities. The breakdown, ISD, HR, and EOC. That really impressed me. And then I had a little note about the personnel. When you look at salary and benefits, and at 44%, that's very low compared to other companies. It can range pretty high, 70 to 80%. I'm so impressed with this. What this has told me so far is that you and your staff has turned over every rock with the leadership of the group that we have here and asking all the questions. And you really took that to heart. So I'm really impressed. On the preparedness aspect on page 10, you made mention about preparing for earthquakes and heat. I can remember a few years ago when I talked about getting face masks, and then after that, the fire started. And and basically, I was kind of like put down a little bit. It's better to have and not need than to need and not have. And had we had done that, I think the county would have been more prepared instead of why shouldn't we get them? So in regards to earthquake and heat, I mean, we don't know when the earthquake is going to happen. And with the coming months, heat may be an issue. We don't know. I love your foresight and your thinking. Let's prepare for it. And as Honorable Marie Strong mentioned, what's very important to me is training. I believe in train one, teach one. And basically you practice as you train. And that training can be basically put out to everyone. It's a force multiplier. So overall, I would say I'm impressed. Now the negatives. I see none. Thank you.
That's a little deal in the city.
Build up, the build up.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're still good with the reserves at the 500,000, because that was what would be down to 570, which we've spent down. Don had some projects that he had talked about as he was getting ready to retire. And I guess we're still keeping that there, but it's also been fortunate for us to be able to use that for the cities. So it's a minimal increase, but just want to be mindful of us. We don't have that well as much as we did to keep going back.
Yeah, so the SFO costs, which was about 410, was going into the trust fund. And then it was being pulled out of the trust fund to then cover the city's portion. And since this is part of the operational budget now, it's not the trust fund. I think we should just leave it and use it for the rainy day. So I think right now, I think it's 500K is a really good minimum in my opinion. And it won't be increasing other than interest. So I know Glenn had mentioned that last time, the interest piece, it's 0.7%, 0.07%. So every quarter we get about 10 to 11K. And it is a trust fund. So so you can't just put it in a different bank account. It's managed in a very specific way by the controllers. And we can discuss offline of those details if you'd like.
Yeah, one of the things that I appreciate now that we pull this whole budget away from the sheriffs and then be able to identify the programs versus the personnel is helping us, the cities who sit on the board, to be able to see the benefits that we're receiving from this joint effort. And also it helps us because as we were talking and my colleagues are talking about, it is about program. And when you talk about programs, you're talking about personnel. So it is going to go up. And so to help us understand this so we can articulate back to our respective cities to say, this is anticipated going forward, there might be some increase, and to what extent, because again, in January, all the finance directors are taking inputs from the council, from the JPA, from the departments, in terms of what they are expecting on their, budgets, and then to work with that. So it would be helpful for us to be able to articulate that back to our prospective council to say, these are the dollars and why is it worth a while and why it's going up. And then, they would be able to factor into their drafts.
Thank you, Marie. So I have looked at these budgets for the last 10 years, maybe 15 years, definitely 10 years. And one thing I can share is that except for last year, the numbers have been about the same. And so we've continued to use the trust fund and bring that in as a reserve and use that. So instead of having that trend go up, we've been using that. But now that it sits in the operational cost, it may go up a little, but this is the base. We feel that we have a very good base. We've quadruple checked the numbers. Every day, it's basically we check the numbers since the last meeting. So we sincerely believe this is the base, and so they go up, 5% standard inflation, or if there's unexpected charges. But the expectation is that, every city is paying around this amount, and there's not a drastic increase.
Yeah, because one of the, in general, for the JPA to be concerned about is that the staff that we are, the staff to support the programs or the JPA are from county. So if the county supervisor decided that they're going to give the percentage of the COLA or whatever, that we have no say in this, right? But then we have to bring it back to say, is that going to be impacted the overall budget and thereby the membership? So that would just.
That's a really good point. There's those negotiations happening currently. I'm sure they're happening. Your cities as well, with the unions. So.
Two questions. You said something about the trust fund. Let's not touch the trust fund. But I'm wondering if you could touch the trust fund to get those jackets that the previous director promised us. First of all.
You won't have to pay much because I take a small size now.
That's how it works.
I assure you, come hell or high water, you will have jackets by the next meeting.
Okay, you heard that.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, sir.
My other question is a little more serious, although I'm really waiting for my jacket. Could you tell us a little bit that relates to the budget about the new people that you've hired and what holes still need to be plugged?
So we have been grateful to you to convince the board that we needed those two positions, the alert and warning position and the community outreach person. The idea is that the alert and warning person is going to take all of these desperate programs and that like tsunami sirens and iPods, and really understand what the need for the communities are and how we specifically have a system of programs and for alert and warning rather than silos of programs. So that will be that person's job, and this is one of the most critical things that ESC and the board could have done for their residents. Alert and warning is absolutely crucial. We've seen it from Maui to Paradise. We don't have good systems, we are going to fail. So that is going to be their job. We haven't hired that person yet. The other person is the community outreach person. So We do a lot of community engagement, but it's not really getting to the core of community preparedness, because, yeah, we talk about go bags. We don't get to the psychology of why people don't want to prepare. For example, I know you don't want.
I don't want to go there.
Okay, all right, so those are two very critical functions. We have Boya here who has joined us, who was also a significant help.
Wait, is that a third person or is that?
No, she is actually helping out on CRISP. She is our GIS person. And
We have two people funded through Measure K allocation of roughly six.
And one's been hired and one hasn't.
They haven't been hired yet because that.
Neither one has been hired.
Yeah, the positions are just now created and they'll go for hiring like ASAP, right?
Yeah.
And then you want to go through your couple of new hires and then there's still a couple of positions to be filled.
Yeah, I want to get a picture right now of. Like, do we have a grants person? A full-time
we
staff
have,
member?
we have Kathy who's retired, who's helping out for part-time for some of the, yeah,
But permanent position? Is that slated?
we have a 2-year position that I think we're getting for some grant management.
Okay, so that's 3 people?
3 people, and then the co-side coordinator as well.
That's 4 people.
And then, so you have 4 positions left to fill.
Above and beyond the 4 that we just talked about.
No, those are the 4.
Those are the 4.
And then do you want to, is that it?
We have a couple others that are joining.
Just trying to get a damn sense of how many vacancies, how many people are coming in, what's the adjusted total? And so forth, pretty simple. What is it?
We started with 8 people. We're gonna have
We started with 8 people. What do you mean we started with it?
DM when I started.
It's total staff,
Total staff,
8,
8.
okay.
We will have 15, hopefully by the end of this by December, ideally.
Is that fully then?
That's gonna be fully staffed up.
And where's all that money coming from?
Most of it is coming from Measure K and net county costs.
So the county invested in new positions that are net county cost funded, and then we have the Measure K positions.
And all positions will be filled by the end of the year.
Yes.
Right.
We've already filled 6 positions so far that have actually in the last 6 months. So as of tomorrow, it'll be 6 months for me. In the last 6 months, we have filled 6 positions.
Are you talking about this, staffing DEM, not
Correct,
the ESC, right? But the staff from your DEM is supporting the. ESC.
absolutely.
Thank you. Any questions?
I can make a couple comments.
There's still no public comments, or if you'd like to move on to.
Dr. Shruti, you brought up, you toggled something for me, and I was wondering about the trust fund investment vehicle. And I know our money just sits in the trust, and we use it as we need it, whether it's a budget cycle. Did I bring this up before? Should we consider saying yes, Cal class or class investments as what the county has started to do? The reason why I bring this up because we had to pass a resolution on our council for the treasurer to look at other sources of investment. For instance, the county is paying 3.42%. These other investments through our JPA can pay 5.62%. And the county is a 45 liquidity turnaround, whereas this one can be 24 hours. So I'm just wondering why we can't have our money sit in these.
I think what we should do, because I think we have asked the question, but we should just get a memo developed for the next meeting
Okay,
that
great.
describes where the trust is invested, whether there's flexibility on moving it, and if
Yes.
there is flexibility, how would you accomplish
Thank
that as
you.
a board?
All right. And my second comment is, I'd be remiss if I don't make mention of this during a meeting. I'd like to say that I appreciate the efforts of Supervisor Slocum, because I really don't want to call out other supervisors, but I sit on other committees with other supervisors and they just obtain information. But Supervisor Slocum, he's looking, and I made a note. How can I help? And that's definitely apparent, because if we didn't have you here, Supervisor, we probably would not have some of the perks, like say the personnel and the movement towards let's make this happen. So I'd like to say I appreciate you very much, sir. Thank you.
And he deserves a jacket.
Maybe a cap to go with.
I got a hat.
Oh, you do?
Oh, did you get a hat?
I did.
No.
He can't wear it without.
Didn't you get a hat?
No. Uh-oh.
Okay, you.
I do have a question sort of add on, and that is the SFO contribution. Is it going forward to be a line item that they will continue to contribute? Because a while back, they finally realized the benefits of being part of this ESC. But it was kind of like, grinding
Pulling
teeth and pulling teeth and trying to get them to contribute. And even for the amount that they're paying, there is also, sort of the discussion about that. Is it a fair share, sort of to speak, right? And so to the point that it is something that you would get a commitment from them to be an ongoing, or that the amount is going to be adjustable accordingly? I mean, are there discussion about that?
The amount is actually based on a formula with a number of calls, and so I think Michael can explain more in detail. This is gonna be a cyclical pattern with SFO, right? So they pay, everything's good, and then someone new comes in and they have no idea why they're paying into it. So it's about socialization and making sure that they understand the value they receive from being part of the ESCJPA. And so we'll continue to have those conversations with them to make sure we have really good partnerships. We're actually doing a huge exercise at SFO on May 15th. So it's these are conversations we continue to have with them.
Do you send out notices to the members about these exercises?
Not currently.
Would we be allowed in there to look, to watch, to observe, to take notes, to do whatever uninformed observers do? I think that would be helpful. All right, thanks. Are there any public comment on that item?
There is no public.
Imagine that. All right. That brings us to item number 4, I believe. The director and member reports. So we'll start with Rico and go around the room. Member reports.
No reports, sir.
Glenn Sylvester, no reports.
No reports.
Very good. No, I don't have anything to report.
Well, I do have.
Oh, no, sorry.
Sorry, Chief, but I just want to mention that in April, our town held a townwide drill. And I think that many of the cities does do that. And so it actually, because I sit on the ESC, I would have the benefit of reaching out to you to see if there is any sort of support or any kind of minimally so that you are aware that what the city is doing. And it is in collaboration with our Hillsborough Neighborhood Network to do that. We also, I think, through Central County Fire, we have hosted a first Mandarin Chinese instructions cert training, and that was really well received. That it shows the sensitivity to meet people where they're at, and in terms of just finding out, there's sort of the cultural sensibilities about how to prepare. And also speaking in their language, I think that it makes participants feel much more comfortable in terms of gaining the skill sets. So I just want to put it out there. And, thanks to Trudy and her team to showed up on the first day of the Chinese instruction training. People really appreciate your presence and your remarks.
Did you want to give your report? What is the next meeting of 2015?
Or you can go to the exercise and then come here.
Yeah, I'll probably do that. If I had my jacket, I could stay warm.
No, I'm kind of glad you
You
brought that up.
definitely look official.
I'm kind of glad you brought that up, sir, because I was thinking, after I leave all these meetings that we have, I go through withdrawals, not seeing you, so, good thing you got another one coming.
I can come up to Daily City. I mean, lunch there, what you call it? That call down there at Joe's. Yeah. I'm curious about something that just came to me. The county did various listening sessions for Measure K expenditures. And then we've also done other surveys and what do you call it, focus groups, and emergency services has come out toward the top on all of those. And I don't know how to ask this, but what are we doing to try to address the community's concerns or interest or whatever it was in emergency services? Do we happen to know that? Was there any detail underneath just saying emergency services is important?
Of what was important to the community when they did the listening session.
Yes.
Yeah, there was some sort of description of what the folks were interested in. A lot of it was, there was a lot of coast-centric things. So a number of the Measure K awards relate to improving preparation and response on the coast side, like the coast side coordinator, various other things, fire chipper events, fire mitigation. Communication was something that I think that came out, like sort of what you're describing, communication to reach folks with different language or folks who are not going to log onto the internet and find out what to do in an emergency. And so there was awards that we're currently finalizing contracts for to make communication plans and actually get out there and do communication. What else were the highlights?
So situational awareness tool.
Let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
Well, my last question on this is, what in this budget supports those outcomes?
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about it? I can talk about it.
So out of the 3.5 million, I think close to 2-ish are sitting in the contracts or MOUs within Department of Emergency Management that are specifically, we've gotten those inputs from the community. Communities have put in for this is what we need in the community, and you all have basically approved those items. So I think, I don't know the exact value, and I can get you the exact value of what will be assigned to us for DEM to manage those.
There's about 10 or 12 items that were approved by the board, and we can sort of do a chart that tracks to the community interest.
I think that would be interesting for the members.
Yeah.
To see how that supports.
Yeah.
What the community was.
Yep.
If we could. Sure.
Absolutely, very not difficult at all.
Yeah, if I may, communication is the key. It's even above the sort of the CERT training. It's hard to get people to do the CERT training, even though they recognize it's important to have the go back and to have the skill set. It's more about the communication, and there's some confusions regarding communication. between the SMC alert and the evacuation plans, what does that mean to them and how should they respond? It's fairly clear on the blue side as to what it's meant to be. It is not clear on the public. In general, we get comments and we feel comments from public going, well, I got this SMC alert, what does that mean? Or how many SMC alerts should I sign on? They did know that it tailored to the city that you work, the schools the city that your kids go to school, you know, your senior parents and yourself, that kind of thing. So there's way that you can decide those information that it makes sense and serve you, the individual, well. But that is not clearly articulated to the public.
You make if I may, just, you make a good point on the county executive side, and I know your side, we're driving to have sort of this gold standard Department of Emergency Management. And so there's been a number of positions added and investments made, and sort of tracing back how that meets the identified community need, I think is useful. Useful just so the public knows we're spending where we're spending our money, and everybody can understand that it's, you know, designed to make an impact on an identified need.
And I wonder, only because we held our disaster council, the required annual. I mean, do our communities update? Because a lot of it was on communication, which the fire chief gave his spiel. And again, yeah, we actually had 4 members of the public there. It's 10:30 in the morning. But that interests them. And so they had questions, but it was more on the communication again, to reset. So I don't know if we coordinate those just to make sure. I know it's a state standard, the city must oblige, but just the topics, or maybe there's information that can be forwarded at that time that maybe is important if there's that.
So at the very base level, right now, we're creating the policy of what SMC alert should be. And then templates that go along with it. And so it's not just, hey, the weather is bad, or hey, the air quality is bad. It's what actions can you take, or here's a website for you to, learn more. There's a lot of market research that says, you have to give people the right information. It can't be too much, too little, and it has to be in the right frame of time. So that is going to be something that we are going to be working on over the next few years, understanding what the maps look like in terms of what communications are needed out there and how do we reach those very specific communities. And that is part of the alert and warning person's job. But we also have some other Measure K funding that's going towards the communications piece as well.
And if I may, just a last point is that wearing the CERT hat that I'm going around the county, I do see that on the coast side, there's much more determined and resiliencies on their sides. And the CERT graduates, if I may say, they are much more eager to learn more, to refresh their skill set, and to activate themselves, because the PSPS is real and it's 7 days out, and the down wires is real because the windstorms. So those are much more. You will see that again and again on the coast side, on the shore side, at the bay side, we sort of relied on, and there's a complacency of, well, the police, the fire, the public works, the cities is going to take care of us. That we should not, have that kind of degrees of preparation, because the duration is not going to be long. So
that is a significant issue in our communities. There is this dependency on government agencies and first responders, and we really need to first get the folks to understand what self-reliance looks like, especially during a disaster, and then clearly identify roles and responsibilities and get them prepared, empower them to actually be prepared to take on their roles. And that is the community outreach person's job.
Right, okay. I'm just gonna have Susie, under the category of announcements or member reports, share with you for a minute or two about our upcoming pillow project.
A minute or two, thank you. On June 22nd, Supervisor's Locum's office has partnered with AMR and Emergency Management Department to do a 45-minute, it's a 2-hour, I'm sorry, a 2-hour project at the North Fair Oaks Library aimed at very young children, which is a real challenge because how do you teach very young children about emergencies? And so our target audience is kindergartners through 3rd grade. We're gonna do the outreach through the North Fair Oaks Library primarily, because we will be limited in how many people can attend. And we'll have it in English and Spanish. We'll have games, scavenger hunts, an ambulance with an AMR. AMR is an excellent partner for this. And the pillowcase project is from the Red Cross. They had done it in years past. They've terminated the project now, so they are not a partner. But you get a pillowcase, you get to decorate it yourself. And then you put in things that you want to take to a shelter or things that would be helpful. So there will be hand sanitizers, Band-Aids, but then they can have their own stuffing. They can add their own set of jammies, whatever it is that they feel they need to take to a shelter if they were gonna spend the night somewhere else. We're really looking forward to it. We're actually having, the printing people here on campus make, cardboard cutouts so we can do emergency versus non-emergency. Cat in a tree, fire in a tree, and the kids can learn what's an emergency. When do you call 911? The 911 operators are working with us to record the sounds of full calls from someone young so that the kids can hear what, you don't just hang up. You don't call 911 and hang up. You stay on the line until the call is ended. So I think it's going to be fun. We're looking forward to it. If y'all want to come,
Bring your pillowcase.
we have one extra pillowcase. It's okay.
And who are we working with on all this?
We're working with Department of Emergency Management, the 911 call, AMR, the libraries, of course. That's-
It's good. Yeah, okay. Thanks. Appreciate it.
And you, sir, you will be there.
Yeah, I've got my pillowcase already. Any questions on that? Pretty fun, huh?
That's fantastic.
Okay.
You have the hammer, if you'd like to adjourn.
Okay. If there are no other comments or business, we will stand adjourned at 10. Thank you all for coming. You are.